Okay, so right now I'm doing something a little bit different than what most people typically do and what I typically do, which is usually I listen first and then I measure second. And that's, that's kind of the standard. I can only speak for myself, but I'm sometimes worried that maybe my assessment, my listening, is maybe not in line with what I'm, measuring. So I'm gonna try something a little different and, bear with me for a second. If I measure first, and then I listen second, some people might say, yeah, well, you're gonna be biased by the measurements. Not really. I've seen so many measurements, and a lot of times the measurements don't exactly line up with what I hear. So I would say not so much. What I do want to know is if there is an issue that shows up in the measurement, is it something that's audible? Or if the bass extension shows a certain amount, is that something that I'm able to get in room? Things like that. If there's a rising treble, is that something that bothers me? So I think that will kind of alleviate some of the pressure to be correct, right? I'm just gonna show you what the measurements show, and then I'm gonna show you what I'm experiencing in my room. So I think that might be a better approach. I'm gonna try it, and let's see what happens. If it's not good, then I'll ditch it. I'll go back to the other way. I just finished measuring this Audition B5, and so far I'm not very impressed with what the measurements are showing me. It's worse than I was hoping. So just to let you know, those are my biases going into the listening. I'm still hoping that it sounds good, but yeah, it's probably gonna sound a little bit too bright, but we'll have to wait and see if that is actually true. But I'm hopeful. So one good reason to measure first is I'm gonna go and measure the other one. Typically I usually measure one speaker and that's it. But if there's an issue, I want to know prior to listening. So I don't want to waste time doing that if there's an actual issue with one of them. So I'm going to go test the other one and see if it measures the same. Okay, so I just tried the second speaker and unfortunately it measures the same. Alright, so I did a quick comparison between the directivity index of the C5, Audition C5, placed horizontally versus vertically. And as we expected, it performs much better vertically. You can see in the mid-range here that it's just much smoother. And so if you can, place any of your center speakers vertically if it's an MTM design like this. So unfortunately, this seems to measure even worse than the Audition B5 bookshelf speakers. Has more of a scoop in the mid-range, so I don't know exactly what's going on. Now, the Encore series of this actually has the center channel which is sealed. This is still ported, so I thought that was kind of interesting. So here we have the Audition T5 tower speaker. I'm really hoping that this one measures better, but it's using the same tweeter, same drivers, so we'll have to wait and see. Okay, so this guy does have a higher sensitivity by about 2.5 to 3 dB compared to the bookshelf, which we would expect because there are more drivers. But unfortunately, the frequency response looks about the same. So tonally they match, which is a good thing, but it's not a tonality that looks good on paper. Again, we have to listen. Here's another interesting point. The port is near the bottom and they've designed it to be near the floor. It does have some feet, so that might make a difference. I'm sure they designed that 100% on purpose to get extra bass response from the floor bounce. So it's solely possible that having the speaker lifted off by the amount that the feet lifted up might make a difference in the bass response. So I installed the feet. So let's see if it does. Okay, so there was a little tiny bit of a difference, but nothing to write home about. So the directivity index on all of them look pretty similar, which is okay. It's not the worst, not the best, but what I hope to do is I'm hoping to be able to EQ the 3 kilohertz region and up. I want to bring all of that down. There's just too much high frequency from what I'm seeing in the measurements here. I've been feeling like I can't breathe, I can't even. Quick first impressions. I just did some listening to the bookshelves as well as the tower speakers, and as the measurements are showing, the treble is just too much. I don't like a rising treble response, and it's pretty obvious. Yeah, I don't know why they did that. So anyway, yeah, I'll have to listen some more. This is just a quick first impression. So just to make sure I'm not crazy, I have the Encore B6 bookshelf that I really love. I use them all the time. I'm going to compare that to the Audition B5, and let's see if I'm crazy.
Yeah, when I did.
Alright, so it isn't very hard to tell that the tonal balance of the Encore B6 bookshelf, even though it has slightly more treble than I would like also, it just has a lot more deep bass extension to kind of balance that out. Fortunately, I'm able to EQ the Encore series to my preference. I mean, I really like the way they sound with EQ. So I'm hoping that the same thing happens with the Audition, although those are a little bit less expensive, so I don't know that somebody's gonna maybe EQ those as much. I don't know. I'm not sure, but out of the box, I definitely could live with the sound of the Encore. The Audition, just too much treble, not enough bass. Ooh, rough.